Good evening. My name is Roger Mumford, Bridge Avenue. I just have a couple of comments and thoughts. The first is, with regard to the RFP for the parking, could somebody give me just a quick explanation on specifically what that RFP relates to?
Well, yes, it's going to relate to the downtown, parking study for the downtown district from the train station all the way down to Riverview. And it's going to be to try to figure out what the parking needs are and give us ideas and solutions as to how to fix those parking.
The actual RFP, and excuse my ignorance, but is it to solicit outside professionals to provide you with a bid for that?
Yes.
For that exercise? And is there a prerequisite for the cost parameters, or is that something that the professionals will bid on?
Professionals will bid on.
The only thing that I would encourage all of you to do in that regard is to make certain that the study is comprehensive and that it takes into consideration many facets, including shared parking. It's my experience that a study like the one that I think you need to consider takes several months and is a $30,000 to $50,000 type of study. Sometimes I think people can make the mistake of hiring a locally reputable engineering company to put these things together, and just because they're reputable doesn't mean that they have the type of specialty that you need. You know, the master plan discussion I know was mentioned very briefly, but I've always thought that the parking issue was a lot broader than just parking. As all of you know, last year an RFP was issued, and 5 developers, of which, of course, I was one of them, spent a lot of time and money, especially in my case, because I appear from presentations. Our effort was to work within the parameters that were provided. I think parking is a lot broader than parking. You count Basie, obviously, is having an enormous expansion, and I think it ties into the master plan and hopefully at some point a shared vision on what's going to happen in the future in Red Bank, just by way of example. When you drive down White Street, it always occurred to me that to simply look at White Street as a parking exercise was, a little fundamental, that by incorporating other properties, whether it's Atlantic Glass or the Stavola parking lot, which is what, we had suggested, that was just part of it. It really needs to incorporate properties on both sides of White Street. In terms of scale, there's some beautiful communities around the East Coast that have retail and copy areas and live-work environments and some limited retail and restaurants and condominium form of ownership and luxury rentals and affordable rentals, all within the confines of something that could expand how Red Bank is today. And I want to share with you that for people like me, it's not, it's difficult to generate a concept like that when it's outside the confines of an RFP. So, the cart obviously here was way ahead of the horse. It wasn't good faith. The council elected to spin a lot of wheels with developers. I want you to know you always run the risk when you do something like this of just not being taken very seriously in the future. I can tell you, for one, I was one of the 2 finalists with regard to this whole exercise. I haven't heard anything from the town. As far as we're concerned now, we're out. And that may not make any difference to anybody here, but for somebody who, I know the mayor was speaking about Thomas Fortune, we're the ones that are building that building and donating it for $1. We do a lot of things on the west side privately that we deliberately don't want our names on. So we're community involved. And I didn't think that provided me with any magic benefit to be selected. But, I know that I spent the most money and put in the most effort. And I was disappointed that there wasn't a more solid dialogue. I just don't think it was good faith. And I was really astounded, and I guess even at my age, I'm a pretty naive guy. I was pretty astounded that people would put short-term, I guess their view of short-term political expediency, ahead of the future of Red Bank and vitality and whatever its form is going to be. I know at the beginning of the meeting this evening, there was a little bickering going back and forth, and this is exactly the type of nonsense that will ultimately result in Red Bank continuing to decline vis-a-vis the rapid growth you see in progressive towns around this area, where you can go out to dinner, where you can go shopping, where you can find a parking space, where you can find a place to live downtown, you find a place to rent, so forth and so on. So, you know, we can meet here once a month. I typically don't come to these meetings, but as somebody who genuinely cares about Red Bank, and I will share with you some major business people whose names you would know well, and I'm not talking about River Center, are just horrified at what's going on with the council and Red Bank. Horrified. And many of them with multiple holdings, given a choice, would just liquidate all of them. Stanley Sickles said himself that in 3 years there's going to be a significant deficit that's created because nobody's planning ahead. Or let me not generalize, that there may not be planning with regard to a loss of revenue that's going to take place on the parking lot that's near Riverview. The proposal that I never got to explain to all of you last year, in one form or another, would have generated $1 million a year to Red Bank net. $1 million a year. And because of silliness going back and forth in the RFP, I never, for an enormous investment, had the opportunity to speak at length about how the economics would work. I want to just share with you one last thought. At the end of the day, the person that I'm most upset with really is myself. You know, that's what they tell you about total quality management. If you've got a problem with people that you work with, there's maybe a good chance that that you have to look in the mirror. And you know, I take notes on things, and I think about things, and here's a few of my thoughts. I broke a golden rule when I became more involved in Red Bank. A developer of any merit cannot operate in a town or a borough that does not have a few qualities. First of all, and this is obviously just my opinion, you need a stable local government. You simply can't expect somebody like me to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars following something that you have directed us to look at and be treated with such disrespect. It's really an outrage. I think that in order for a municipality to move forward, you really need to have some visionary leadership. You need to understand that there's a grand vision for what's going to happen. It doesn't mean turning Red Bank into a 20-story building and, you know, all that nonsense. It has to do with having a common vision and bringing people together with it, which this council is not. I think you need to have a unity of municipal purpose, and I think that a majority of the members of the board in a two-party system must conceptually and actively support the vision of urban revitalization and how that's going to work. So, you know, at the end of the day, without taking too much of your time, and without, you know, getting into some other aspects of the whole RFP process that was fraught with conflicts of interest, I have to share with you that as a Red Bank business person, as somebody who hopefully will continue to make significant improvements in Red Bank, including on the west side, which incidentally, decade after decade until I came along, nobody was paying attention to. When I assemble properties, it's impossible because you do not have a qualified independent redevelopment committee. That there's somebody who knows what they're doing can't get things done in Red Bank. And this council doesn't have the experience, in all due respect, nor would I expect you to handle these kind of things. You have to bring in other people. It's not just running an RFP for parking, Eric. It's not. It's more than that. It's my hope that someday, before Red Bank is too far behind in business and people like Garmany leave and other businesses leave, that you all realize that the business people who showed up in that school last year, when I spoke with a gentleman from BNE, they were very passionate about their concerns for Red Bank. And finally, as somebody who, you know, I'm one of the most, I guess, liberal people I know, and in, you know, in Red Bank, the whole thing is turned it's really turned upside down. So in any event, I appreciate your time, and I hope that moving forward, as a council, you're more respectful to people who you ask for their money and time, and that you recognize that Red Bank really needs to spend some time thinking internally. And if this process of bickering doesn't improve, I can only suggest you try to form a government where there's less partisanship, because this is really not serving the citizens of Red Bank well. Thank you.